Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.
Hello and welcome to Pole Position, the motorsport show here on RockSport Radio. Andy Alston with you alongside Adam Todd, broadcasting live on DAB digital radio across central Scotland, online and on TuneIn. And on the show this week, Vettel scarred as Hamilton wins at Paul Ricard, Sutton at the double to get out of touring car trouble, Lorenzo goes for win number 3 at Dutch TT, and Gallagher wins a rally in style at Argyll. All this and more on Pole Position. So, Lewis Hamilton is the new championship leader after once again topping Sebastian Vettel in that battle at the top of the championship. It's been great to watch so far. He won the French Grand Prix last weekend with the Mercedes man finishing ahead of Max Verstappen and the Ferrari of Kimi Räikkönen. Now Hamilton has a 14-point lead over Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel going into the next race in Austria this weekend. And Adam, Lewis didn't put a foot wrong at all. He was fantastic, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was vintage Hamilton all weekend. He was fastest in every session all weekend apart from free practice free. So fastest in FP1, FP2, all the qualifying sessions, and the one where all the points are awarded the race. So it was a big result for Mercedes as well, especially after what happened with Ferrari winning in Canada. That was expected to be a power-dependent track. And Ferrari won. That was a track Mercedes should and probably would have liked to have won. And obviously going to Paul Ricard, first time French Grand Prix since 2008 and first time at Paul Ricard since 1990. So a big marker laid down for Lewis Hamilton. That new engine's obviously helped a lot, and we're hearing they've got more upgrades for this weekend. So Mercedes certainly on the march.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're over a third of the way through the season now as well. And we're in the midst of this kind of triple header, if you will. So how important was that one for Hamilton? Because you mentioned Canada there, where Vettel got the win over Lewis, but now this is Hamilton. He's got a bit of a cushion now between him and the Ferrari man.
Well, that's the thing. Sebastian Vettel, you can argue whether it was right or wrong what he did at the start. Obviously it ended up terrible. He had such a great start, and that was the issue, because obviously then ended up going into Bottas, but by doing that he's lost a lot of championship points, and that could easily decide at the end of the day when we come down to Abu Dhabi, the final race of the season, a few more points. But it's a massive win for Lewis Hamilton. He's got the momentum now. You mentioned the triple header. Momentum in any sport is so key, and to have that going into this weekend in Austria, then into his home race as well in Silverstone, he's going to be so pumped up for that. So things are certainly looking up for Mercedes at the moment. Yeah,
and just briefly, the other two drivers that were on the podium last time out there, Max Verstappen scored his best result of the season in second place, but Kimi Räikkönen, Adam, he was back on the podium for the first time since Azerbaijan, and I think he really needed that result last weekend.
He certainly did. There's been a lot of talk about Charles Leclerc going to be replacing him at Ferrari perhaps for 2019, and Kimi Räikkönen obviously has been on these one-year contract extensions for so many years. I can't even remember how long now since he rejoined Ferrari, so it's been a long time for Kimi Räikkönen. Got a podium. At the end of the day, though, he's not doing what he needs to be doing, and that's when his teammates having a bad race. He needs to really be taking off the points off the number one Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, and that's not happening.
So with Räikkönen back on the podium, his Ferrari teammate Sebastian Vettel could only manage 5th place after colliding with Valtteri Bottas at the first corner on the opening lap. And I'm delighted to say that joining us on Pole Position to talk more about this incident, recap the race and look forward to Austria is James Eagles from the Checkered Flag. And James, just firstly, talk us through that incident on the opening lap between Vettel and Bottas.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you very much, Andy and Adam, for having me back on. It was a strange error from Vettel, as he seemed to just misjudge his braking, lock up and career into Bottas. Didn't help either of them, but more so it damaged them in different ways. Vettel, in his championship fight, lost 10 points and was absolutely slated by the Italian media, called it a wasted 10 points and wasted opportunity. Too much impulsiveness, said La Stampa, and La Repubblica said that Ferrari won't win a championship with mistakes like that, such as Singapore last year, I guess, as well. But it didn't help Bottas because he damaged his floor and he was severely hampered with his aerodynamic performance coming back through the field. But in defence of Vettel, I think, not exactly going to say many positive things about this manoeuvre because it was stupid and it hurt him and and Bottas has just said, but he did well to recover. It was a fantastic drive. He made probably the most overtakes or definitely the most overtakes of anyone, mostly at the first chicane on the Mistral straight. But it was a bit impulsive and cost him dearly, and who knows how highly it will factor in deciding the championship, as Hamilton's pretty good at Austria, very good at Silverstone, and we're coming up to Hungary, which is another track that he enjoys, and Hockenheim as well.
Yeah, and James, do you think Vettel's 5-second time penalty that he received for his role in that incident, do you think that the penalty should maybe have been stronger than that?
It's a tricky one because you can argue it both ways. So he fell to, I think, 17th place, which was penultimate at that point, with Bottas only behind him. And 5 seconds probably would have hampered him had he not had the car that he was in, and it might have cost him even a point to finish, say, if he was driving a Renault or something like that. But he's in such a dominant car, so it wouldn't really hurt him. But 5 seconds is, quite lenient, I would say. First lap of the race, you don't expect a driver of Vettel's experience and ability to do something like that. So maybe 10 seconds would have been a little better and fairer on Bottas, because it hurt him enormously.
And James, were you surprised by just how far off the pace Ferrari were in comparison to Mercedes last weekend? Because you mentioned there Vettel making his way through the field, and he did a fantastic job, but his teammate Kimi Räikkönen finishing in third place, but he was 25 seconds behind the eventual race winner Lewis Hamilton.
Exactly. I think Mercedes, they had their new engine this weekend, and they may have just shown how costly that late fault they found on the dyno on the Wednesday evening before Canada actually turned out to be. It's not that big an increase in power, I believe. It's probably in the region of no more than a few horsepower, but the freshness of the engine, they had the chicane on the Mistral straight, which was a little contentious, even though I think it ended up making the Grand Prix better than it probably would have been had it just been that long stretch down to Senior. But they seem to find performance, and they needed it. It's a very important stage because Ferrari managed to capitalise on that issue that they had on the new batch of power units in Canada. And ultimately, they've come away leading the Constructors and now the Drivers' Championship.
Hi, James.
But Ferrari, but Ferrari's lack of pace was somewhat of a shock. They were absolutely nowhere near Mercedes all weekend. Vettel was a long way off in practice, still ahead of Raikkonen, which isn't that surprising anymore.
Hi James, we've got the Austrian Grand Prix coming up this weekend, as we mentioned earlier, and Mercedes car has won that race every year since it reappeared in the calendar back in 2014. So what do Ferrari need to do differently to beat Mercedes? I
think they need to have a look at what that new engine brings, and also they have a very good car in the corners, and also more importantly trailing a car. They're better than Mercedes is in dirty air, so still, even though they thought they'd fix that problem coming in from 2017 into 2018, but it's all about making damage limitation was Paul Ricard, and now they have to bounce back for Austria, because Silverstone, as I mentioned earlier, is very strong for Hamilton and Mercedes, so they're going to struggle there.
And James, this is the time of the year when we're beginning to see some driver rumours ahead of next season, and Red Bull team boss Christian Horner, he said that he thinks Daniel Ricciardo will stay at the team for next year when of course they move to Honda engines. Do you think that will be the case?
I would believe so. I think Ricciardo's, it's incredible if you look at the situation in China and compare it to now. Ricciardo had about 4 options, and now he only seems to have 1 or 2 maybe, and one probably highly realistic one, which is staying at Red Bull. I think Honda have shown this season that in an environment where they are ultimately respected, just as Toro Rosso, I think it's been good for them to join Toro Rosso because they're very grateful to have a works partnership. And they've developed a good engine. It's good in the speed traps in practice. I think Hartley and Gasly were first and third in FP1 in the speed traps, which is very encouraging and far more than anyone expected coming into the year. So Red Bull haven't got much of a reason to complain, and Ricciardo hasn't got much of a reason to complain because the Red Bull chassis is fantastic, and with Honda already working on their 2019 engine as they announced this week, I see no reason for him to be worried.
James, one driver I want to get your thoughts on is Fernando Alonso, because he was in the headlines for all the wrong reasons after his comments over the team radio during the race. He was saying that he had no tyres, no brakes, he was out of the points, didn't really care what was happening elsewhere. We all know that he's unhappy at McLaren, but James, do you think that his constant complaining is maybe starting to undermine the sport a little bit? I think people are getting a little bit tired of it.
I wouldn't think so. I think that it might happen that people become fed up with Alonso before that, but he has his own problems. He wants to win. He's experienced winning already this year. You know, he's competed in 2 World Endurance Championship races and won both of them, nearly completed his Triple Crown. Just has the Indy 500 to go. So I think that it's not a Formula One's problem that Alonso is falling out of love with the sport. It's more McLaren's problem because they've made him so many promises and haven't kept them. The whole lack of performance was always down to Honda and never the chassis, and now they've got the same engine as Red Bull. Alonso's looking at particularly Ricciardo and Monaco and saying, well, why am I not challenging for pole position or a podium? Because you said your chassis was in the top 5 in the grid, and that's plainly not the case.
And James, of course, it's a Renault engine that's inside that McLaren this season. Renault are set to finally bring that upgraded MGU-K unit to Austria, which I dare say will come in quite handy since Carlos Sainz Jr.'s failed towards the end of the French race. But James, McLaren don't need to use it. It's optional, but it seems a little bit ironic now that this upgrade is available after Red Bull have announced that they're leaving to go to Honda next season. But do you think this MGU-K unit will deliver an upgrade in performance that we're all expecting from that Renault engine?
Hopefully for the customer teams and the works team, as you said, with Sainz's failure, it will, because had it not been at Monaco, then Ricciardo certainly wouldn't have won that race. And they're seeing failures, more and more failures with each passing weekend, which is screams a little bit of 2017, particularly Mexico that year, where I think they had about 6 failures in one weekend. So hopefully for McLaren it works, and Red Bull, of course, and Renault, it works, and they don't suffer with any failures. Austria may not be the best place to see it, although it is quite a power-dependent circuit. The straights are fairly short, and the corners are where you really gain the time, even though there are just 9 of them.
And James, Charles Leclerc, he's been one of the stars of the season, and he impressed again in France at the weekend, and a lot of people have been linking him with a move to Ferrari next season. But do you think he would rather bide his time and maybe go somewhere like Haas instead?
He's not fazed by anything he goes into. So I think if the opportunity to go to Ferrari does arise at the end of the year, then I see no reason why he wouldn't take it. He slotted seamlessly into Formula 2 and has come into Formula 1, made a couple of mistakes towards the start of the season in Australia, particularly Bahrain in qualifying. But since then, he's found this incredible vein of form and is helping Sauber finish. Okay, Williams are doing their best to help them as well, but helping Sauber finish 9th in the Constructors' Championship would be a great result for them. Some needed money. They're using the new Ferrari partnership to good effect. It just shows how much of a difference an engine can make, and they're rebuilding. So he's been closely linked with Ferrari for a number of years now. I think he would love to join them, and I don't see why he can't. He's someone like Hamilton who's extremely confident and very has every right to be so in his ability and can take to a top team easily. I think if he goes to somewhere like Haas or stays at Sauber for another year, he may, maybe stop his momentum.
And at the other end of the scale, I suppose you've got Romain Grosjean, who's really struggled in that Haas car this year. He's still yet to score a point after 8 races. Where do you think it's gone wrong for him this season?
Probably be easier to say where it's gone right for him. I mean, he's had some misfortune. You have a look at the pit stop incident in Australia and hitting the groundhog in Canada when Haas specifically said, don't crash this weekend, we haven't got many front wings. But there are other times, Azerbaijan, the race where he spun behind the safety car in 6th, and Paul Ricard last weekend in qualifying 3, where he actually ended up hurting Magnussen as well in the process. So time, I think, is running out, and it's a gamble that hasn't really paid off. I'm sure when he joined in 2015, he envisaged a shot at maybe Raikkonen's seat a little way down the line, and that seemed perfectly reasonable. He was doing well with Lotus, and I think he just got a podium at Belgium before he signed the contract. But he just hasn't shown the performance needed, despite a promising start there.
And just finally, James, the FIA has announced that we'll have a third DRS zone at the Austrian race this weekend. Do you think that will help overtaking at all?
In theory, yes, but they've added some of these third DRS zones this year, and it hasn't really had an impact on any overtaking at all. So Austria is a little difficult one because it's on probably the longest stretch and down to the tightest corner where there was overtaking anyway. So hopefully it will bring some closer racing. Although the racing at Austria is usually very good, and except for 2014 where Rosberg sort of drove off and left everyone in his wake.
James, great stuff. I'm well aware there's a big game on TV at the moment that you'd be keen to watch, so we'll let you go. A pleasure as always, James. Thanks very much for joining us here on RockSport Radio.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
James Eagles from the Checkered flag there, speaking to us. And stay with us as we talk all about the British Touring Car Championship up next on RockSport Radio.
Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.
Now, Ashley Sutton returned to winning ways in the British Touring Car Championship last weekend, winning 2 of the 3 events at Croft. Sutton won the opening race of the event, finishing ahead of his Adrian Flux Subaru teammate Jason Plato, and he was delighted with the result.
We would have much preferred this earlier on in the season, but I'm pleased with that performance. Obviously, it's always a gamble, especially when your teammate's starting next to you to go onto the hard tyre, and he's on the medium tyre. So that was a gamble that I had to take, and it's hopefully going to pay off later on in the day.
Ashley Sutton there, and Adam, you mentioned it there, the challenges of battling against your teammate, both in similar cars. Did well to fend off Plato, a very experienced driver, of course, in this series. Yeah,
absolutely, and that win for Ashley Sutton, in fact both the wins, because he won race 2 as well, as he said there, he would have liked them to have come earlier in the season. Of course he would have, because it has been a fairly miserable start to the season. I think it's fair to say, obviously the reigning champion, you're wanting to defend your title, and he was unable to do that. But all of a sudden, with just a couple of wins in British touring cars, which you have to say it's some achievement, especially with the likes of Success Ballast as well, it can be extremely tough to have a good string of results, but he did that at Croft at the weekend. So a terrific performance from Ashley Sutton, and perhaps this is the start of a great second half of the season. Who knows, could he maybe defend his title after all, but still going to be a long shot, you have to say, at the moment.
And Sutton became the first man this season to win back-to-back rounds after taking the checkered flag in the second race, and he couldn't believe it.
I'm honestly shocked. Didn't expect that. Obviously, I'll be really honest with you, Tom caught me napping at turn 1. I was more worried about my teammate to the left, who I knew jumped the starter straight from the get-go. So I sort of just covered my backside there, and next thing I know, I've got a Toyota alongside me. So obviously he had a blinding start, it made me up my game for the first few laps, and then managed to pick him off at the hairpin, and from then on it was full attack, and to be honest, he kept me honest. Kept me honest.
Sutton there speaking to BTCC.net, and Adam, just taking a quick look there at the Drivers' Championship. With that strong performance, Sutton moves up to 7th place in the standings on 112 points. He's 50 points behind the leader Colin Turkington. So yeah, I mean, we've still got a good few events to go. Snetterton, Rockingham, Knockhill of course as well, Silverstone, and then finishing of course with Brands Hatch. So all still to play for.
Absolutely. Well, that's us halfway through the season now, of course, and it's been a thrilling start to the season, you have to say. And last week on the show I said that because of how well Colin Turkington was doing, you're maybe only looking at maybe 8 drivers that are perhaps in the mix in the championship, but Ashley Sutton was 13th this time last week, and now he's up to 7th in the standings, so he's gained 6 places, so it is tight. And that group around Ashley Sutton, they're all kind in the 110s, and then you've got Matt Neal who's in 127, and then you've obviously got Tom Ingram and Colin Turkington first and second in the championship, who do have a slightly more healthier lead over the rest of the pack. But the chasing pack is coming thick and fast.
And Daniel Lloyd took his first ever win in the series at the final race, and it was a day that the BTC Northern Racing man will never forget.
It's unbelievable. From how we start, I'm welling up a little bit, so I'll try and hold that. Awesome. Just the efforts of the team. We literally nearly didn't get here, so start the weekend on the back foot as well. 28th in FP1. We worked so hard on the car. We got it to where we wanted to be. Got it nailed down. I knew I had it in my head what I needed to do, and I did it.
And Adam, fair play to Daniel Lloyd, because he's missed the opening 3 rounds of the season. First appeared at Oulton Park and finished 25th in the first round, 17th in the second, and then retired from the finale. At Croft last weekend, he was 8th, then 9th, and then taking that win. So, he'll take a lot of confidence from that as well.
Absolutely, and these are the great stories you'll love to hear in motorsport. As you mentioned here, the struggles he had, as he said in an interview, they never even made it to the weekend, and then to have that final race victory, and I always think that's the best one to win at the end of the day, because you've not got any more races to worry about. You can really soak up the atmosphere and enjoy that race victory, and the confidence that'll give him as well going into the next part of the season, and that's just going to keep on building and building. So certainly one to watch in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And Adam, the interesting thing about the British Touring Car Championship this season for me is that so far we've had 11 different winners. It's been great to watch, hasn't it?
Certainly has, and that's exactly what you want from a motorsport series. You want it to be competitive, unpredictable. That's why you watch it. We don't like watching the same people win over and over again. We've saw it in Formula 1 with Mercedes domination. We've saw it in other categories as well. But British Touring Car, it's just drama after drama, pure excitement. And it's a fantastic day out as well with 3 races in one day.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, Ashley Sutton winning 2 of those races last weekend. And Adam, I get the impression that you really needed those results, because to say he's had a tough start to the season is a little bit of an understatement.
Well, what did we say last week? We were talking about why isn't he delivering? Is the pressure of a champion? It is a completely different mindset going into the next season with that kind of hanging on your back. But at the end of the day, 2 race victories, and as I said, that's just going to give him confidence now for the rest of the season. We are only halfway through the championship, and you've saw with those 2 victories in that 7th place, all of a sudden he's gained 6 places in the championship. So if he's able to find form like that in the next couple of races, it's Nennerton or Rockingham, Knockhill, then all of a sudden he is going to fight hard to retain that championship, because no driver likes to give up a title easily, do they?
Yeah, definitely. And I was always getting the impressions here that it felt a bit like Formula E in some respects, where the reigning champion's title defence just hasn't gone to plan at all. But yeah, maybe Sutton will kick on now. And the thing is as well, Adam, that battle at the top of the driver's standings has been absolutely fascinating. Colin Turkin, of course, leading the way after 3 top 5 finishes last weekend as well. So he's now 19 points clear of Tom Ingram in 2nd place.
Yeah, it was a really good job from Colin Turkington at the weekend, because he came off the back of Oulton Park, 3 great results, getting the double podium, and I think it was a 6th place finish in the first race of the day. But you need to follow up strong results like that, and it was a good haul of points to the championship, exactly what he wanted, and he extended his championship lead, because Adam Morgan was only 12 points behind going into the race, and now Tom Ingram's the top contender to Colin Turkington's reign at the moment. But Turkington, again, we talked about Ashley Sutton having a bad start. Well, Turkington didn't have the best of starts either. All of a sudden he's got a decent lead at the top of the standings, so just shows you how unpredictable it is.
Absolutely. Now, MotoGP returns to the Cathedral of Motorcycling this weekend as Assen hosts round 8 of this year's championship. Now, it's Marc Marquez who leads the way at the top of the standings there, but the big question going into the race this weekend is, will Jorge Lorenzo be able to make it 3 wins in a row? So, Adam, first and foremost, do you think Lorenzo's upturn in form will continue this weekend? I
think it's always tough in MotoGP to get 3 race victories in a row. It's going to be tough, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's got to be heading there as effectively the man to beat, because he's came off the back of not only 2 race wins, but you have to say 2 dominant wins as well. He's really been like the old Jorge Lorenzo, that smooth riding style. And Assen, he's not had a great history there. I think his last victory was back in 2010 at that track. So the tracks that we've been at recently in MotoGP, in the likes of Catalunya, which a track he likes very well, and Mugello obviously suiting that Ducati, so perhaps Assen isn't a track that you would necessarily associate with Lorenzo doing well, but as I said, he's the man in form.
Yeah, and as for his teammate Andrea Dovizioso, fair to say he's been under a bit of pressure going into this weekend's race. So why do you think he's been struggling so far?
Well, 3 retirements and 4 races, and this is a man that was built up so much last year. He took Marc Marquez right down to the final race of the season. We're expecting another fantastic battle between Marc Marquez and Andrea Dovizioso, Ducati versus Honda this season, and it hasn't happened from Andrea Dovizioso's side of that Ducati garage. And, I mean, 3 retirements in the course of a season would probably really dent your hopes of winning a championship, but to have them so early in the season together, it has been a miserable few rounds for Dovizioso, and he needs to get back to winning ways as soon as possible if he's to have any chance of fighting for the World Championship. But and again, when you do go through a run like this, all of a sudden confidence becomes an issue, lack of confidence. You'll be seeing what Jorge's doing as well, and and then the relationship and the team changes, the atmosphere changes. So Andrea Dovizioso is certainly under pressure, and who would have thought that a few races ago?
Oh, absolutely, and now both factory Ducati riders are level on points in the championship, but Adam, realistically, it's going to be a big ask for either driver to win the title, but who do you see as their main contender? Who are they going to be putting all their resources, all their focus behind?
Well, this is a real difficult one now, and I think Ducati could argue probably in a good situation that they now do have a competitive Jorge. They have an out of sorts Andrea Dovizioso, but sooner or later you'd imagine he will rediscover the form that obviously took him towards that title bid last year, and he just failed in the final race of the season, and he won the first race of this year in Qatar. So they've now got 2 very competitive riders, but you have to say Jorge Lorenzo, and especially when he's going to be teammates with Marc Marquez, he'll be wanting to show the guys at Honda that they were right to sign him up, and even threaten Marc Marquez a little bit on the track, in the sense that, look at me, I'm winning races here, I'm really threatening your reign, wait until I get in the garage with you next year. So it's going to be a fascinating race this weekend and the rest of the season in MotoGP. Yeah,
and just you mentioned Marc Marquez there. He has a 27-point advantage going into this race, so how do you think he'll be approaching this one?
Well, there's 2 options you could look at in terms of Marc Marquez. He can either play it safe, and if Marc Marquez plays it safe and takes a good haul of points, and he's still going to be in the podium, or he can go out all out for the race victory. And unfortunately what happened for him in Mugello, when he was trying to chase Jorge Lorenzo, he crashed out, and he admitted after that race that he was pushing too hard, he was going for the race victory. It's rather ironic, because he did say before the race that he was just going to take it easy, take a good haul of points back, but no, obviously, I mean, these are MotoGP riders. You can say, they're going to play it safe, but at the end of the day, they're wanting to win. So for Marc Marquez, 27-point lead, but I mean, that can evaporate. One poor race and a victory for Valentino Rossi, and all of a sudden it's down to 2 points.
Well, absolutely, and the thing is, Valentino Rossi, he hasn't won a race so far this season, but he's got 4 podium finishes so far. Now, he's got a strong record at this track. He won there last year as well. So do you think that this is the time where Yamaha will get their first win of the season?
Well, it's 8 wins in the Premier class for Valentino Rossi, and it is a track he loves. As you mentioned there, he won there last year. Strange one this for Yamaha, because as you mentioned, they've not won a race this season yet. They're second and third in the championship with Valentino and Maverick Viñales. So sooner or later you'd feel that win's going to have to come, and if there's a man that's going to do it for you, it's going to be Valley, and Assen, what a place to do it.
Yeah, and now what about Johan Zarco, Adam? Because he's had a few disappointing results recently. He'll be hoping for a better performance this weekend, surely. Yeah,
he obviously had that retirement in his home race in France, and he's probably not done anything since there, in the sense finished 10th in Mugello and then 7th in Catalonia. But since then, he's not done anything like he did at the start of the season, in sense, he was fighting for race victories, getting pole positions, and all of a sudden it's just kind of fizzed out about it. Having said that, he's still 4th in the championship, Johan Zarco, but this is the man everybody was building up as perhaps the next Valentino Rossi, but all of a sudden just seems to have gone a little bit quiet, so he'll certainly be hoping to rediscover his form sooner rather than later.
And as for Britain's Cal Crutchlow, he was 4th last time out in Catalonia. Do you expect him to be pushing for a podium place this weekend?
Yep, he was disappointed in Catalonia, the last race, not to have got a podium, so that LCR Honda is quick, and again the issue with Cal just seems to be a bit of consistency. If he can get that bike, the tyre temperatures as well, if the tyres suit the bike, then it's very quick. We saw that in the early stages of the season, so no reason why he can't get the podium. He has only actually had 1 podium this season in Argentina, where he won, and apart from that, I mean, he's had 4th a couple of times, 6th place as well, but we did make a lot of fuss at the start of the season when he was leading the championship, first British rider to do it in over 30 years, so that was a big achievement then, and since then just not done anything again, similar to Zarco, I suppose, not done anything spectacular. So a nice podium in Assen would be good for Cal.
Yeah. And what about Danny Pedrosa, Adam? Because we had the news a few weeks ago about him leaving Honda. Have we got any update as to where he'll be next season?
Yeah, well, he had the press conference in that kind of race in Catalonia and didn't really elaborate too much, shall we say. So
to put it mildly, yeah. I mean, that's it. He holds a big press conference and says, so we all think something's happening. And then
nothing, yes.
Yeah,
so,
brilliant.
Just keeping us in the dark, talking about it for a few more weeks. And yeah, definitely the satellite deal with Yamaha looks to be the best case for Danny Pedrosa, but Yamaha haven't actually signed a satellite team up yet, so because Tech Free are leaving to join up with KTM, so still needs to be a few contract negotiations, not only with Danny, but in terms of the behind the scenes, in terms of Yamaha and hooking up another team. But I'd still fancy Pedrosa to be in MotoGP this time next year. Yeah.
And just finally, Adam, give us an idea as to why Assen is such a popular track.
Well, all the riders love it, and in fact, earlier on today they were actually saying that a few of the riders were saying they hope that they don't allow Formula 1 to race here, because Charlie Whiting, the FIA race director, he had been in Assen earlier this year and he'd been looking at the track to see whether Formula 1 could host a race here. And of course you've got Max Verstappen as well, so it would be in F1's interest to have a race in the Netherlands, but the MotoGP riders kind of saying it would take away a bit of the character, and this race has been all the way since the championship started in 1949. The actual track, Assen, it was 1955. It's the longest running track to have held around in MotoGP. It used to always have the race on the Saturday as well, but it's just got that history, that prestige. It's got a great track layout as well. It's not too samey. You've got a lot of different components to it, and the fans as well. They make it over 100,000 expected this weekend, so it's a great atmosphere.
And moving on to the world of rally, and Andrew Gallagher is back at the top of the Scottish Rally Championship table after winning the Argyll Rally last weekend. Now, Gallagher finished just 5 seconds ahead of Donnie McDonald, with Bruce McCombie in third. Now, joining us on pole position to talk more about this and all things rally is, of course, rally expert David Halley. And David, with Gallagher now just 1 point ahead of McDonald in the standings, this title battle is going to get even more interesting.
Absolutely, a swing of the 2 points from one behind to one ahead on one event, and it's an incredibly tight championship, and it's going to continue to be so.
And that was Gallagher's second win of the season as well, David. So, how impressed were you with the performances he was putting in last weekend?
Excellent performances in an older spec, but slightly heavier car. So he was wringing the neck of that thing to get it to where he got to. Donnie McDonald in second place was again placed very handily. He doesn't always, and I don't think he will always challenge for the outright win, but the ability to bring the car to the finish in the points every time is what keeps Donnie in the championship.
Yeah, now Gallagher was behind the wheel of a Focus WRC, while Donnie has a Ford Fiesta R5. David, could you just explain the difference between those two cars and then the challenges subsequently that Donnie would have faced trying to keep up with Gallagher?
Well, the Focus WRC World Rally car, it is an older specification of car, but it's a 2-litre engine. So it's got a little bit more torque than the 1600 engine in the R5. The R5 is the current WRC 2 spec car, so it's not a full World Rally car. It's not got all the bells and whistles as a World Rally car's got on it. So it needs to be pedalled very well to keep up with a World Rally car. But the Focus being an older specification of car, it makes the R5 able to challenge it.
Now, we mentioned Bruce McCrombie there. He rounded out the top 3. That was his first podium in the series since 2015 as well, so he'll be happy with that one.
Absolutely. He's been around in the championship for a very long time, and he pops up and has occasional flashes of brilliance, but he needs to do a little bit of work to put it all together, to do it on a regular basis, I think.
Yeah, so how far away do you think he is realistically maybe from competing for the championship, David?
the championship is so open. I wouldn't rule anybody out of this at the moment. That all it takes is one ditch-finding moment somewhere in the championship, and somebody who's leading isn't leading anymore. It's that tight. There's so many good drivers in it. Jock Armstrong should have been up there. He had a bit of a mare, put the car off, had a small fire in the car, so couldn't continue. But he would have been challenging as well. There's just so many good drivers in the championship at the moment.
Hi David, you mentioned there Jock Armstrong. How disappointing would that result have been for him?
Oh, incredibly disappointing. He's very competitive. He is quick. He's a former champion, so he knows how to win the championship. And putting it in the trees early doors is not the way to go about winning a championship. And everybody can go off the track, but when the accident then causes a problem that causes a small fire, it just brings play to the end of the end of the day. It doesn't allow you to continue.
And one man who didn't take part was David Bogie. He was competing in the British Rally Championship in Ypres, finishing in second place. Why do you think the organisers decided to hold an event in Belgium?
The British Championship is allowed to have an away day. Ypres has been a very popular event for British competitors for years. It's held on some very smooth, fast tarmac roads in around the town of Ypres, unfortunately made infamous by the goings-on between 1914 and 1918. But it's a fabulous, huge festival event, and it's a round of not just the British Championship, but Belgian Championship and the Lowlands Land Championships. It's a very, very popular event. So the British drivers were going out there to do the event anyway. To a lot of people in the south of England, that event is closer than it is to come to do a Scottish event.
And World Rally driver Thierry Neuville, he took part winning 15 of the 23 stages. How will that help him prepare for the next World Rally event?
I don't know whether it will or it won't. He was out in a red nose car. They have their own version of Red Nose Day, and he had a car covered in red noses and was out for, he is Belgian, it's his big event, it's the big event in the Belgian Championship. Hyundai put him out in an R5 specification car, because that's the specification for that level of event, and it doesn't relate really to a World Rally car at all. So yes, he's got some seat time, he's had a bit of fun, but I don't think it will have changed his mindset as far as the World Rally Car and World Rally Championship are concerned.
And David, Matt Edwards won the event on the British Rally Championship banner. David, you mentioned it a little bit there earlier, but could you just explain further how Edwards can win this event, but so can Neuville? It's the fact that so many competitors can actually take part. It's one rally that's that welcomes so many different categories almost.
Absolutely. Within that event, there are a number of championships represented, including the British Rally Championship. So although Matt Edwards won the British Rally Championship standings in there, it was only the drivers who are registered for the British Rally Championship competing in that event who were counted within that little event, within the big event. So yes, Thierry Neuville was doing well in the main event, and the British Championship, what a heck of a fight that was. That was just ridiculous, the amount of effort that went into getting that win for Matt Edwards.
Yeah, definitely, David. And you know, in that British Rally Championship with Edwards there, that's back-to-back wins as well for him. So how important is that for him going forward in the rest of the season?
Well, absolutely. 2 events, 2 wins puts him 20 points clear of his nearest rival, which is a huge margin. He had a heck of an event. He had an electrical problem early in the event. The team decided to change the wiring loom in the car in a 45-minute service, so they completely stripped the car and put a new wiring loom in the car within the 45 minutes. Unfortunately, that wiring loom seemed to have a fault as well, so rather than try and diagnose that, they elected to swap the loom back again to its original one, and they did that, lost a bit of time, gave him a time penalty. He was then working his way, he was then 5th in the British Championship standings within the event. He was working his way forward. Then he had a power steering problem which had to be resolved at service, and he went into the last stage in second place, happy to be second, until Keith Cronin, who's been leading for most of the event, had a puncture. and out popped Matt Edwards in the lead and winning the event.
And David, you mentioned Edwards having some electrical problems earlier on in the event. David, could you just explain the thought process that goes through the teams in terms of, do we decide to change a part entirely, or do we maybe take a gamble and see if the car gets through? How difficult a decision is that to make?
It's a hugely difficult decision. The engineers who are running the car, they plug their laptops in and try and analyse where the problem lies within the electrics and electronic system. If it's not immediately apparent where the problem is, it can be a fault with the wiring loom, a broken wire within the loom or whatever. And they had a 45-minute service, and it is possible to change a wiring loom within 45 minutes. It's not possible to change two in 45 minutes, so that's where they ended up with a small problem. But I reckon if you put your car into the garage and asked them to change the wiring loom, it would be there for a week.
David, just moving on to World Rally, we've spoken on this show in the past about a possible return of the Rally Safari. Now, it seems to have taken another step closer. We've got this kind of shakedown event, this kind of trial event next year. It looks like 2020 is going to be the plan for a permanent return of this event. But David, it's not been on the calendar since 2002, so could you just explain the importance of having this event back in the championship?
It's a classic event. It's been around for a long time. It's obviously been missing from the World Rally Championship, although events of a similar nature have run in the area. It is an entirely different event to the sort of events we see within the championship at the moment. And the idea, and particularly from Jean Todt, the president of the FIA, he's an ex-rally navigator, and obviously he worked with Peugeot in their rallying days. He's a very keen supporter of rally and the more classic side of it, and he would like to see something different rather than the events that we currently have. Under the regulations, they can't just say they're going to hold a World Rally Championship event. That doesn't happen. They have to put on a test event to show that they can run an event of that stature. And if they prove that they have the infrastructure to do that, they may, and it's still only a may, be awarded a round in the 2020 Championship.
And David, there is talk that this event would be a little bit more streamlined than what it was previously, but I dare say that's a modern necessity.
Absolutely, and again, depends on how far back you go, but the event was over a week and just traipsing all the way around Kenya for a very long time, over huge distances, stages of hundreds of miles, not as we have them at the moment, the biggest stage in the World Championship of 50 miles. The stages were hundreds of miles of flat-out motoring, and you can close the roads to other cars, but you can't close the roads to giraffes and elephants, so there was all sorts of hazards there in the event.
And David, Kimi Räikkönen, he's been linked with testing for Toyota's World Rally team, and this was first rumoured and then dismissed a while ago, but it seems like team boss Tommi Mäkinen is keen on that to happen.
Yes, Tommy and Kimi have history in the days of the Fiat Punto Abarth that Kimi ran for a couple of years during his sojourn away from Formula One. So he has expressed an interest in driving anything with four wheels as quickly as he possibly can, and it would be a great coup from Toyota's point of view to get Kimi in the car even for a test.
And David, what could Räikkönen realistically achieve if he was to return to the championship?
A lot of publicity for the championship is the slightly is a view that won't necessarily go down on the sporting front, but it would bring a lot of publicity to the championship. Whether he's got the will to do a full championship and commit to all the testing that's required, I don't know at this stage in his life. But if Toyota were to offer him a bag full of money to go and play in the Forest, I'm sure he would be delighted to take it.
And you mentioned the publicity aspect there of having Räikkönen in the championship. Did that have an impact last time when he was in the World Rally Championship?
Indeed, when he was with Citroën, there was always a lot of interest around what Räikkönen was doing. He is a Formula One world champion, so he is a name that is known possibly even more at the time he was doing it than Sebastian Loeb.
David, how realistically our toes are going to be pursuing this. Do you think it is just a little bit of a stunt, or obviously Raikkonen's fair to say under a little bit of pressure with Ferrari in Formula 1, but is there a genuine chance that Raikkonen could compete in the World Rally Championship next season, or is this just a little bit of speculation while we're waiting for the next event?
I suspect there's a little bit of speculation, a little bit of fun among the finish, but it wouldn't do the championship any harm at all to have the extra publicity, even of Raikkonen having a test, let alone him actually taking part in the championship. I don't honestly see him taking part in a full championship, but we shall wait and see.
And just finally, David, there's talk that next year's Dakar Rally is under threat, with Peru thinking about walking away. Do you think there's any mileage in this speculation?
Absolutely. The other countries who have hosted it in conjunction with Peru have all pulled out, leaving Peru on their own. So the organisers thought they had an agreement with Peru, but that's only a penciled agreement, not a fully funded pen-signed, inked agreement. So the event running wholly in Peru would appeal to a lot of people. The problem is that Peru are going to have to put their hands in their pockets to something of the tune of £25 million to run the event, to provide the security and have the organisers there. So they do get a lot of interest from around the world by showing off Peru on television and in the various media about the event, but it's a huge amount of money for a lot of rich boys to go racing through their deserts.
David, great stuff. Pleasure as always to chat with you here on Pole Position. Thank you very much.
No problem. See you again.
Rally expert David Halley there. Now, Adam, as we come to the end of this week's Pole Position, let's take a little look at what's happening in motorsport locally in Scotland. An event taking place in Knockhill this weekend.
Yes, it's going to be a fantastic day out at Knockhill. There's always so much happening at that racetrack, of course. And this weekend there's going to be a Scottish Championship car racing meeting. This weekend organised by the Scottish Motor Racing Club, and there's going to be around 18 races taking place in the one day on Sunday. Lots of different categories in racing as well. Scottish Formula 4, you'll have Legends, Mini Coopers, BMW Compacts, Fiestas, Hot Hatches,
everything.
Sports and Saloon. Yes, everything you could want a Sunday afternoon. Classic Sports, Saloon Championship, yeah, the list goes on, Andy. So 18 races, you can't beat it, and especially with different categories. It's always good to get a feel for different cars.
And what about some of our Scottish drivers? Paul Di Resta, what's he been up to?
Yeah, well, we had the latest round of the DTM Championship. He finished P4 in the first race in that, and then P6 in the second race. So not too bad results, you have to say, for Di Resta. He's currently 5th in the championship. It's a fellow Brit, actually, who's top of the standings in DTM, and his Mercedes teammate Gary Paffett, he leads the way in 99. Paul Di Resta's on 87, so it is tight, and as I said, Paul Di Resta's 5th, so the top 5 separated by just 12 points, so it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. Mercedes are leaving the DTM, which is the German touring car series, at the end of this season to focus on an entry into Formula E. Now they have 6 drivers in DTM at the moment. Realistically, they can only have 2 in Formula E. So who are those 2 going to be? Well, everybody in Mercedes will be wanting to impress. Eduardo Mortara, he's 2nd for Mercedes, and as I said, Di Resta currently the 3rd Mercedes. So yeah, not too bad for Di Resta. Of course, he did win the DTM Championship back in 2010, I believe, before he went into Formula 1 for a few seasons before Sunday.
And Adam, I'm sure we'll talk about this in more detail on next week's show, but Susie Wolff, she's been in the headlines this week. What's been going on there?
Yep, she has been announced as the team principal with immediate effect of the Venturi Formula E team. Also a shareholder as well, I believe, part shareholder. She's joined that team, and as I said, with immediate effect. So she's actually going to have a tough task in her hands, in the sense that she'll be thrown into the deep end, because of course we've got that season finale, the double header, New York of the Formula E Championship, Jean-Eric Berne and Sam Bird battling it out for the championship, but Susie Wolff will certainly have her hands full, and of course the big job will really be next season, won't it? This new Gen 2 car coming in, and obviously that will be really her first full season, so it's probably good that she is getting to just have a race, see how it all works, because of course she did test with Williams before, but she's never actually done something along the lines of managing a team in motorsport. So I think it's a good move from Venturi that she is going to have that experience in New York ahead of the next season, which will get underway in December.
Absolutely, and she's got Felipe Massa will be one of the drivers for Venturi next season as well, and Susie Wolff will be the second Scottish team principal in Formula E as well. Alan McNish, of course, chair of the Audi setup. OK, Adam, this is it. It's the moment you've been waiting for the last hour. It's time for the final lap of pole position. As Adam, you tell us 6 stories from the world of motorsport this week in just 60 seconds. So let's see if you can get back to winning ways this week. Adam, your time starts now.
OK, Billy Munger got his first taste of a Formula 1 car at the Rockingham circuit this week. The British F3 driver, who had both of his legs amputated after a crash last year, got behind the wheel of a 2011 spec Sauber. The German Grand Prix remains in doubt for 2019, with no deal in place to host the event at either Hockenheim or at the Nürburgring. Ex-F1 driver Rubens Barrichello, he's set to race at next month's Spa 24 Hours. The Brazilian will drive it for the Straka Racing team in a Mercedes-AMG GT3. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway has announced it will build a quarter-mile dirt track within its iconic oval. The temporary circuit will host a dirt track race in the lead up to its Brickyard 400 NASCAR event. The Robo-Race autonomous car is set to become the first driverless vehicle to run at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. The electric car will aim to compete the iconic hill climb at the event, which celebrates its 25th anniversary next month. And finally, Adelaide and St Petersburg could host a round of the Formula E Championship in the future. Both cities have said they're in negotiations with the series about hosting a race.
There you are, Adam.
That's
back to winning
pole
ways.
position.
There you go. First win on the show in a while, and well deserved too, Adam. So well done. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on pole position this week. But we'll be back from 8 o'clock next Thursday night to do it all again. My thanks to Adam and to you for listening, and stick around because we have John Mulgrew coming up next on RockSport Radio.
Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.